Anytime there's a senseless gun tragedy, there's a family left grieving, there's a community picking up pieces.
And I don't know if there's provisions for law enforcement to do it or not. I doubt there is. So I think you're going to have to go to an FFL dealer.
Has done their own variation version of it. And so there's a lot of levers and nuance, again, and complexity to making sure that these are done correctly.
Small percentage of those guns are ever used in any type of gun violence.
Recent tragic incidents. In response to the recent tragic incidents, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed new arm laws on January 1, 2023. The impetus for these changes was fueled by two notable mass slayings that occurred in the state, one at Oxford High School in 2021 and another at Michigan State University in the preceding year. The Oxford High School slaying resulted in the tragic demises of 4 students and left several others injured. This incident served as a catalyst for heightened scrutiny and calls for reforms in Michigan's arm legislation. Subsequently, another distressing event unfolded at Michigan State University in the following year, where 3 students lost their lives and an additional 5 students suffered injuries. Governor Whitmer, in an effort to address these incidents and curb arm violence, enacted a series of laws. The first notable change is the introduction of a new arms storage law. Aimed at improving safe storage practices, this law requires arm owners to lock their arms in the presence of anyone under the age of 18. Failure to comply could result in serious consequences for the owner. If a minor gains access to an improperly stored arm and causes harm, the owner may face up to 93 days in jail. For more severe cases involving injuries or fatalities, the arm owner could be charged with a felony, leading to potential prison sentences of up to 5 or 15 years, depending on the severity of the outcome. Violations may also result in fines ranging from $500 to $5,000. This law emphasizes the responsibility of arm owners to prevent unauthorized access and underscores the potential legal repercussions for negligence. Additionally, Michigan has implemented new regulations regarding universal background checks. Previously, universal background checks were mandatory only for hand-arm purchases and certain long arms with barrels shorter than 16 inches. The recent law expands the scope, requiring a universal background check for all arm purchases, including long arms. This comprehensive approach seeks to ensure that individuals acquiring any type of arm undergo thorough background scrutiny, contributing to efforts to prevent arm-related incidents. The state has also introduced red flag laws designed to address situations where an arm owner may pose a risk to themselves or others due to mental health issues or distress. Contrary to the misconception that red flag laws are aimed at stripping individuals of their Second Amendment rights, these laws primarily focus on temporary measures. If a person is in crisis, a judge can issue an emergency short-term order, temporarily restricting access to arms until the situation is assessed and resolved. This approach reflects a nuanced understanding of mental health challenges. Expanded its restrictions on arm ownership for individuals with a history of domestic violence. While previous laws only applied to those convicted of felony domestic violence, the new regulation extends to prohibition to individuals convicted of a misdemeanor related to a domestic violence crime. This measure underscores the state's commitment to preventing those with a history of domestic violence, even at the misdemeanor level, from possessing arms. The prohibition lasts for up to 8 years, reflecting the severity of the offense and the need to address potential risks associated with domestic violence. In parallel with these legislative changes, Governor Whitmer signed bills in 2023 eliminating sales tax on arm locks and storage devices. This incentive encourages arm owners to responsibly secure their arms when not in use, promoting a culture of safety and responsibility. Michigan's comprehensive approach to arm regulation reflects a response to recent tragedies and a broader national dialogue on arm laws. The state aims to strike a balance between individual rights and public safety, employing measures that encourage responsible arm ownership while addressing potential risks associated with arms. These changes mark a significant shift in Michigan's arm laws and contribute to the ongoing discussion about the appropriate role of government in regulating arms. Michigan's new arm control laws. In February 2024, Michigan is set to implement a series of new arm control laws, marking a significant shift in the state's approach to arm regulations. These changes come in the wake of a broader national conversation on arm rights and regulations, with several states reevaluating their stance following a landmark U.S. Supreme Court ruling in June 2022. Furthermore, the state has expanded restrictions on individuals with domestic violence convictions. Those convicted of misdemeanor domestic violence offenses will face an 8-year prohibition on owning arms. This aligns with efforts in many states to address the intersection of domestic violence and arm ownership, aiming to protect vulnerable individuals from potential harm. These changes represent a significant departure from Michigan's historical stance on arm control. The shift has been attributed to a change in political dynamics, with one-party rule providing the impetus for such legislative adjustments. Critics argue that these measures infringe upon Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens, emphasizing the need for a balance between public safety and individual liberties.
Money gun owners and people who want to buy a gun might have questions about how these new laws affect them.
Top story here at 5. Governor Whitmer signing a series of bills into law aimed at preventing gun violence.
To you, private citizen, the law says now, I need to do a background check.
Anytime there's a senseless gun tragedy, there's a family left grieving, there's a community picking up pieces.
Small percentage of those guns are ever used in any type of gun violence.
The broader context of these legislative changes includes a national conversation on the interpretation of the Second Amendment, particularly after the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling in the case New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. This ruling emphasized the need for arm laws to be deeply rooted in history or analogous to historical rules, fundamentally altering the legal scrutiny applied to arm regulations. In Michigan, these changes are poised to have a lasting impact on arm owners, prompting concerns among advocacy groups and individuals about the erosion of their constitutional rights. The legal landscape surrounding arm control continues to evolve, with ongoing debates about the constitutionality and effectiveness of various measures. As these new arm control laws take effect in February 2024, Michigan becomes a focal point in the national conversation about the balance between individual freedoms and collective safety. The implications of these changes will likely reverberate in legal challenges, advocacy efforts, and discussions about the role of government in regulating arms within the broader context of constitutional rights. Michigan's Red Flag Law. Michigan's recently enacted Red Flag Law, officially known as the Extreme Risk Protection Order Act, has introduced a framework aimed at temporarily restricting an individual's access to arms if they are deemed to pose a significant risk of harm to themselves or others. This law, signed by Governor Gretchen Whitmer, responds to the need for preventive measures against armed violence, particularly in the wake of tragic incidents, such as the mass slayings at Oxford High School in 2021 and Michigan State University in the previous year. The core purpose of the Red Flag Law is to empower certain individuals to petition the court for an ERPO, which, if granted by a judge, temporarily restricts the individual in question from purchasing, possessing, or accessing arms. The process begins with a petition to the circuit court, allowing concerned individuals to present evidence supporting their belief that the subject poses a significant risk of causing harm through armed possession. This evidence must detail specific behaviors, threats, or actions contributing to this concern. As with any significant legal development, it's to navigate the legal process and ensure that the rights of all parties involved are protected. Michigan's Red Flag Law signifies a substantial shift in the state's approach to arm control and violence prevention. While critics and supporters continue to debate its merits, its implementation reflects a commitment to finding a balance between preserving individual rights and safeguarding public safety. As the law takes effect, ongoing legal discussions and potential legal challenges will shape its interpretation and application. In this evolving legal landscape, staying informed and seeking legal counsel are essential components of ensuring that individuals' rights and public safety considerations are appropriately weighed and protected. Landmark armed safety legislation. The Michigan House of Representatives, under Democratic leadership, has recently passed a significant legislative package focusing on the secure storage of arms. This action, catalyzed by the tragic mass slaying at Michigan State University on February 13, marks a pivotal moment in Michigan's legislative history and is a testament to the state's dedication to enhancing arm regulations. This comprehensive legislative package, comprising 8 bills split between the Senate and the House, has received mixed support from Republican lawmakers. The statistics from Everytown, an organization committed to reducing armed violence, are sobering. Approximately 350 children under 18 inadvertently shoot themselves or others annually, often with arms from their own homes. Over 700 young individuals commit self-annihilation each year using family-owned arms. The issue of unsecured arms extends beyond the household. School slayings are often perpetrated with arms obtained from the shooter's home. The United States Secret Service found that about 3/4 of school slayers had accessed arms from their family residences. This alarming statistic underscores the critical need for secure arms storage to prevent such tragedies. Representative Felicia Brabeck, author of House Bill 4144, emphasized the dual nature of arm ownership as both a right and a responsibility, drawing parallels between mandatory safety measures for private pools and the lack of similar legislation for arms storage, despite arms being the leading cause of demise for children aged 1 to 17 in the U.S., the Democratic members in the House highlighted a glaring inconsistency in safety legislation. In a broader scope, the House has also passed legislation mandating background checks for all arm purchases, including unlicensed transactions. This holistic approach indicates a serious commitment to tackling various facets of arm safety and preventing future tragedies. Despite their potential for positive impact, these bills have faced opposition. A scheduled news conference by House Republicans was canceled, and State Representative Jamie Thompson expressed concerns that the mandate might not effectively address the root causes of violence or deter criminals. Thompson suggested that existing laws could penalize irresponsible arm use. The debate surrounding these legislations reached a controversial peak when the Michigan Republican Party, led by Chair Christina Caramo, drew contentious parallels between arm control measures and the Holocaust. This comparison, reported by The Advance, sparked widespread criticism and highlighted the intense debate and differing perspectives surrounding arm legislation in Michigan. The legislative journey of these bills is not over yet, as they now head to the Michigan Senate for further consideration. The outcome of this process will be closely watched by advocates and critics alike, as it will significantly influence the future of arm safety and regulation in Michigan. The dialogue and decisions emerging from this process will not only impact the state, but could also set precedents for arm legislation nationally, reflecting the evolving discourse on arm rights and responsibilities in the United States. Michigan tightens arm laws. The recent legislative action in Michigan, led by the Democrats, to overhaul arm laws, particularly extending arm bans for misdemeanor domestic violence convictions, marks a substantial shift in the state's approach to arm control and domestic violence. This follows in the wake of multiple mass school slayings and reflects a growing concern over the intersection of arm access and domestic violence. Governor Gretchen Whitmer's endorsement of this legislation on Monday places a significant 8-year arm possession prohibition on individuals convicted of misdemeanor domestic violence. This move extends the current state law, which already imposes arm restrictions on those convicted of felony domestic misuse, addressing a previously unlegislated area misdemeanor domestic violence. Governor Whitmer's rationale for these bills is rooted in the principle of preventing further harm. She argues that individuals found guilty of violently attacking their partners should not have access to arms, which could potentially be used to escalate threats or inflict further harm. This stance underscores a fundamental concern for public safety and victim protection. This legislative change is part of a broader reform in Michigan's arm laws since Democrats gained control of both legislative chambers and retained the governorship. This suite of reforms includes the implementation of red flag laws, stricter background checks, and safe storage requirements.
On me, the buyer, yes.
Well, how do I do it?
Well, I think you're going to have to go to a federal firearms dealer.
The same place where that unfortunate and tragic school shooting took place
Has done their own variation version of it. And so there's a lot of levers and nuance, again, and complexity to making sure that these are done correctly.
Let's assume the gun was just laying out here in Oxford and the kid took it. That would have violated what the governor signed.
All initiatives signed by Whitmer earlier in the year. These laws are a response to 2 lethal mass school slayings in Michigan within a 14-month period, highlighting the urgent need for legislative action in the realm of arm control. State Senator Stephanie Chang, a prominent advocate of the bill package, notes that this legislation aligns Michigan with similar laws in 31 other states and the District of Columbia. This alignment demonstrates a growing national consensus on the need for stricter arm control measures, especially in the context of domestic violence. The federal law already prohibits those with felonies or misdemeanors related to domestic violence from owning arms. However, there's a push for state-level laws, which advocates argue can be more effectively enforced and are less vulnerable to changes in the Supreme Court's stance. This month, the Supreme Court considered a challenge to a federal law barring individuals under restraining orders from arm possession. The hearing indicated a likelihood of preserving the federal law. John Feinblatt, president of Everytown for Armed Safety, commended Governor Whitmer and the Michigan legislature for taking a firm stance against arm ownership by individuals with a history of intimate partner violence. Feinblatt's statement reflects a wider acknowledgement of the role of arms in exacerbating domestic violence situations. Data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reveals that arms are the most common weapon used in homicides involving spouses, intimate partners, children, or relatives in recent years. In 2020, arms were used in 57% of such slayings, a year that also saw an increase in domestic violence, possibly exacerbated by the coronavirus pandemic. Under the new Michigan legislation, individuals convicted of misdemeanors involving domestic violence are barred from purchasing, possessing, or using arms or ammunition until they have completed their imprisonment, paid all fines, and 8 years have passed. This law aims to provide a significant cooling-off period and prevent the immediate re-access to arms by individuals with a history of domestic violence. The significance of this law was highlighted during the signing ceremony, where the parents of Maggie Wardle, a 19-year-old victim of a slaying by an ex-boyfriend, spoke in support of the legislation. They expressed hope that this law would save lives and prevent tragedies like the one that took Maggie's life. Post-Bruen era. The post-Bruen era refers to the period following the landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision in the case New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruen. This decision, issued in June 2022, had a significant impact on the legal landscape surrounding arm rights in the United States. The Bruen case marked a shift in the way courts scrutinize arm regulations, introducing a new test to assess the constitutionality of such laws. In the Bruen decision, the Supreme Court ruled that arm restrictions could violate the Second Amendment unless they were deeply rooted in the nation's history or analogous to some historical rule. This legal standard, often referred to as the Bruen test, changed the approach to evaluating the constitutionality of arm laws. Rather than focusing solely on the public good served by the laws, courts were directed to consider whether the regulations were sufficiently similar to historical laws in existence around the time of the Second Amendment's ratification in 1791 or the 14th Amendment's passage in 1868. The Bruin test created a more rigorous standard for assessing the legitimacy of arm regulations. It required courts to analyze whether laws governing modern arms, such as attack rifles, were consistent with historical traditions of arm regulation. This shift had implications for the ongoing battle between individual rights and public safety, as it placed a heavier burden on the government to justify the constitutionality of its arm laws. In the context of California's arm laws and the legal challenges discussed, the post-Bruin era signifies a period where the legal framework for evaluating the Second Amendment has evolved.
There is a slight difference between the Senate version. I support both versions.
And I don't know if there's provisions for law enforcement to do it or not. I doubt there is. So I think you're going to have to go to an FFL dealer.
Preemptively taking away citizens' God-given rights.
Or there's a child that lives in your house, your firearm must be locked away.
The decisions and legal battles that follow Bruin set the tone for how courts across the country approach cases involving arm regulations. The tension between individual rights to bear arms and the government's interest in public safety continues to play out in courtrooms, with the Bruin decision influencing the criteria by which these conflicts are assessed. California's response to the Bruin decision and its enactment of Senate Bill 2 reflect the ongoing struggle to balance individual rights and public safety in the realm of arm control. The legal challenges and arguments presented in court highlight the complexities and divergent perspectives surrounding the interpretation of the Second Amendment and the extent of permissible arm regulations. Potential legal repercussions. Michigan's recent enactment of new laws, particularly those related to arm control, presents a complex landscape of potential legal repercussions and challenges. These laws, passed in an era where arm violence and control are highly contentious issues, represent a significant shift in the state's approach to public safety and individual rights. While they aim to enhance safety and reduce arm violence, they also tread into delicate constitutional territory, particularly regarding the Second Amendment. The most immediate challenge to Michigan's new laws will likely come in the form of constitutional challenges. The Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution protects the right to keep and bear arms, and recent Supreme Court rulings, notably the Bruin case, have affirmed an expansive interpretation of this right. Michigan's laws, particularly those imposing stricter arm control measures, are likely to be scrutinized under this framework. Legal challenges may argue that these laws infringe upon the constitutionally protected rights of individuals, leading to potential legal battles that could escalate to higher courts. The practical enforcement of these new laws poses another significant challenge. This includes ensuring compliance among arm owners and the logistics of implementing measures such as background checks, red flag laws, and safe storage requirements. Law enforcement agencies will need clear guidelines and adequate resources to effectively enforce these laws. Additionally, there is the risk of non-compliance by arm owners, either through lack of awareness or deliberate defiance, which could undermine the law's effectiveness. A critical challenge in the wake of Michigan's new laws is balancing public safety concerns with individual rights. While the intention behind these laws is to reduce armed violence and enhance safety, particularly in the wake of school slayings and domestic violence incidents, they must also respect the rights of lawful arm owners. This balance is not just a legal issue, but also a social and political one, requiring a nuanced approach that considers the diverse perspectives and rights of Michigan residents. Michigan's new laws could set important precedents for other states considering similar legislation. As such, they will be closely watched and potentially used as a model or a cautionary tale, depending on their legal and practical outcomes. The national conversation on arm control is highly polarized, and Michigan's approach could significantly influence broader debates and legislative efforts across the country. The political landscape in Michigan will also be impacted by these new laws. Lawmakers who supported or opposed the legislation may face political repercussions from their constituents. This could play a significant role in upcoming elections, with arm control likely to remain a divisive and prominent issue. The response of the public and interest groups to these laws and their legal challenges will also shape future political strategies and campaigns. Beyond legal and political aspects, there are economic and social consideration. The impact on arm retailers, particularly with the removal of taxes on safety equipment, and the potential financial implications of enforcing new laws are important factors. Furthermore, the social response, including how communities and individuals perceive and adapt to these changes, will be pivotal in determining their success or failure.